Good afternoon and welcome to the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for January 9th, 2024 here in the city of Roswell. I want to begin by acknowledging the elected body present, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember G. Lee Hills.
Happy birthday to G. Lee Hills, by the way.
Happy birthday. Pro Tem and Councilmember William Worthland. That's it. And we also have Councilmember Alan Sells for his first committee meeting. Welcome, Councilmember Sells. I'm Jeff Leatherman, Deputy City Administrator, and I'm joined by our City Attorney, David Davidson, and our Executive Assistant to Council, Michelle Miller. The purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to the mayor and council and to discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. As Deputy City Administrator, I will be the chair of today's committee meeting. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received at the regular council meetings held at 7 p.m. in city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month and the fifth Monday of each month during open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage in our online platforms, and if you have questions or need information regarding any matter, our staff is available to provide that information to you. In addition, if you have service requests or need to report a concern, I would highly recommend utilizing our City of Roswell app or service web portal. We encourage you, of course, to view all of our calendars of events at roswell365.com. The first item that I have before you tonight is the approval of the minutes of the Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee meeting from December 12th, 2023. I will entertain a motion moved by Councilmember Beeson and second by Councilmember Hills. Thank you. Took me a second. I know. It's the curse of this chair. It really is.
Not as easy as it looks.
It's not as easy as it looks. I got a first and a second. Thank you. Any further questions or discussions on the item? Seeing none, all in favor, please. Motion passes. Thank you. We have no actions under administration or finance. We do have recreation and parks. Item number 2 is the consideration of approval for mayor and council to rescind the official proclamation from 1952 stating that Youth Day would take place on the second Saturday of October each year. Director Stephen Malone will be presenting that item.
Good evening, thank you. This item is a request for consideration to move the annual Youth Day celebration from the second Saturday in October to the first Saturday in October. So to give you a little background and history that we've been working through. So our Youth Day history, as it's been, our Youth Day celebration was established in 1950. In 1952, 2 years after the Youth Day celebration was established, Mayor T. Ford Rucker proclaimed the second Saturday of each October to be honored as Roswell Youth Day. And we've been fortunate over the past 73 years to celebrate and commemorate that tradition on that date each year. That right there in the presentation is the original proclamation from Mayor Rucker from 1952. On a typewriter.
Probably candy still left in the street from that first parade.
Things that we are taking into consideration when we are working through this recommendation to mayor and council in 2024-2025 school year with the Fulton County school calendar, we always contend with the Fulton County fall break. That has always been a conflict that we have managed through as it relates to the second Saturday in October. As you'll see this coming year's school calendar, you're going to have a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday conflict, which will butt up right next to that second weekend in October. That's what we're familiar and what's ongoing. We're used to dealing with that holiday as it stands right now. What we're looking further out is, as you see in the 2025 and 2026 school calendar, Fulton County will be implementing a week-long fall break, which will then take into consideration the bookends, which will be that second weekend and the third weekend that it will be part of that week-long holiday. So as we start to look at how we want to position Youth Day, these are some major factors that we're taking into consideration when we're looking at when we should be offering an event that's celebrating the youth. Potential conflicts. As we start to look at the month of October, these are the known conflicts that we have on our schedule as it is today. If we were to move to that proposed Youth Day celebration, which would be the first weekend in October, there has also been an ongoing motoring festival on that first Saturday that has been submitted permitting for, as well as a Sunday Roswell Wine Festival on that first weekend as well. The second weekend, obviously, we would have the Fulton County school calendar start of the fall break. We will occasionally, such as this year, we will have the Yom Kippur holiday, which will occasionally fall on that second weekend. Again, that is something that we're having to contend with this year. Yom Kippur will fall on the second Saturday in October of 2024. The third weekend in October, again, that's the end of the fall break that we'd be contending with, and then the fourth weekend in October, our department specifically will be hosting several fall Halloween celebrations. Halloween Funhouse that's hosted at East Roswell, as well as Saturday we offer a mother-son dance, which is generally done at the Bill Johnson Community Activity Center. So as we take into all of these potential conflicts and school calendars, we've made a few recommendations to the mayor and council this evening. Considering Fulton County school fall break schedule, we proposed the scheduling of the celebration to a more suitable date, specifically the first Saturday in October. To facilitate this change, we would request that mayor and council grant our department the authority to annually assess the scheduling of this event and make necessary date adjustments as needed. This proactive approach ensures that Youth Day celebration remains accessible and enjoyable for our community while accommodating the evolving school calendar and other pertinent events. So what's our request tonight? Based on what we've kind of contended with and what we brought before you, our staff is recommending mayor and council rescind the official proclamation from 1952, which was stating that Youth Day would take place on the second Saturday in October. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Malone? Yes, Councilmember Beeson.
So to clarify, what we're voting on tonight purely is rescinding the requirement that it has to be on the second Saturday. We're not necessarily setting the date right now, nor are we setting the date for any other celebrations or festivals. We're just rescinding that original order.
That's correct. Now, I can tell you from our planning process, we would go ahead and set the date immediately following based on how we set all of our event schedules leading into this calendar year. Additionally, just so I'm speaking clearly, we want to create consistency. We do not want to purposely move this date from year to year. We do want to try to create some tradition with that date, but we also understand that there may be unforeseen challenges that we're not seeing today that could come 5, 8, 10 years from now, that we want to be able to provide the department with some flexibility on having to move that date if we need to on a year-to-year basis.
Other questions for Mr. Malone? Yes, Councilmember, there we go again, Hall. I'm gonna think about it.
What's your name?
Yes, Hall.
Thank you. Just a couple questions, just a little funny. When I first read this and didn't read it in detail, I thought we were resending, S-E-N-D, this for the second Saturday. And I thought, oh, that's nice. It's so old. We're just going to send the same thing down to them again, just to update their records, when we're really rescinding.
Yes.
Are we, as part of rescinding this, are we proposing a date? I'm sorry, just to follow up on this, on Councilmember Beeson's.
Yes, our staff recommendation is the first Saturday in October.
Is there a way of not designating that, just saying a Saturday in October or the official proclamation, and then just making a note that we're going to follow the first Saturday of October, and then having the flexibility to change that in case there's something that causes us to, if Fulton County changes the way they do things in 2 years, we'd have to change our proclamation again? Or that's what I'm,
So once this proclamation from 1952 is rescinded, there is no set date for Youth Day, which provides us the flexibility to choose whatever date makes the most sense for us.
oh, we're not doing another proclamation.
That's correct.
We're just simply rescinding this.
Correct. And then we would work through all of the logistic and scheduling challenges that we know to be the case ongoing. What that also does is annually, we will provide a new proclamation every year that is celebrating Youth Day. That is when we generally engage the Roswell Youth Advisory Council, and they get to come before mayor and council. So officially, there is a new proclamation that will be read and signed every year for Youth Day. This proclamation from 1952, as we started to review it, really presented itself more of a resolution and a proclamation all wrapped up into one, and we wanted to make sure that we were very clearly rescinding that before moving forward with anything else.
Mayor Wilson.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this, Jeff, because there's several pieces, I guess. One is, sorry, if I'll put this in, looking at my blue hands. What you want to say is, look, from 2 years ago, this is another request from the city leadership, staff, and talent to have the authority to be empowered, to be able to navigate certain decision makers, making decisions based along the alignment of policy decisions that the mayor and council have derided out, and be able to take things out of a box if there appears to be a practical conflict. The practical conflict is Fulton County has changed its vacation schedule in the fall. We know that if we continue to have it on the second Saturday, it is going to significantly impact the attendance for the Youth Day Parade. So being the people responsible for the Youth Day Parade, in terms of making sure there's high levels of participation, you say, I don't want to have it on the second weekend of October anymore, because it's going to hurt the attendance. So I'd like flexibility. What probably makes sense is the first week of October. However, I do have one or two other festivals. One's the Roswell Vine Festival. It's going to hurt them. So I got to get them to know this well in advance so they can make plans to start changing their scheduling accordingly. Because obviously, from the city's perspective, if you're going to make a choice, am I going to do Youth Day Festival or am I going to do the Roswell Wine Festival? Probably going to make the decision to do the Roswell Youth Day Festival, right? Which I think would probably make sense. But also you want to give people, the folks who are behind that time to navigate, to say, hey, let's help put together a successful Roswell wine schedule. And just for the record, Jeff, and you may want to weigh in this, the Roswell Wine Festival was originally created on the first Monday of October to pivot off of the Youth Day, which is really what we're going to do again. So if we have to move Youth Day, we have to ask the Roswell Wine Festival to pivot again. That's what my understanding of kind of some of the scheduling is.
Yeah, and just as some additional commentary, just from the leadership perspective, you know, as I look at the city of Roswell, one of the most special and important things that we do is celebrating the youth in our community, and the pivotal moment in that is the Youth Day Festival. It causes us all to stop and say, hey, we are celebrating our community across the board in the youth in our community, and we want to do that without the conflicts of our Fulton County school break. And really, I think that's what it really comes down to, is when I watched the Youth Day Festival, and we happened to luck out this last year, that the Youth Day Festival was not on the same fall break weekend as it normally has been before, and it was just lucked out. And I would argue in the 5 years that I've seen the Youth Day Festival, we had more people in the streets, more people, I mean, we ran out of candy, which we usually don't do, on the turn, coming around by Mac McGee's in some cases, and that really is a testament to the volume of people that we saw and celebrating out there in the community. And I think that's really part of the driver behind this is that we really realize that hey, people do take off. We want parents and kids to take time off and enjoy their fall break, but we also want them to come to the Youth Day and celebrate the kids in our community. And that's what we're trying to find the right balance of. Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. That about covers it. I love having the flexibility and having an internal expectation from our leadership here, but still having the flexibility. And depending on what's going on with holidays, with other opportunities, I mean, we had what I understand to be a very successful Chris Kendall Market. Oktoberfest could come up. I don't know. I mean, so there's all kinds of stuff that could come up. So I think this is great.
Councilmember Beeson. Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Morthon.
In talking about the various options, this is being the first weekend in October. The other option was for the end of October as being the last weekend in October as being the other option. While we were talking about this, you brought up a good point. That last weekend in October, the weather is very iffy as the seasons start changing. So you're at best assured of a 50% bad weather scenario, whereas first weekend in October, the weather is much more cooperative.
Councilmember Beeson.
My children, and specifically my youngest now, attend Jewish school. That was a major concern from several residents coming into this year. I had several who had attended this past year's parade, loved it, really enjoyed it, but did flag as a point of concern, wanted to make sure it was on the city's radar that Yom Kippur, which is one of the highest holidays within Jewish culture, religion, to make sure that they would be able to attend. But it was their understanding as well that it doesn't typically move. So I think the city accommodating that really not only goes as a testament to celebrating youth in our community, but understanding the sense of community to make sure that we can have a high turnout from all individuals as long as they are physically here and able to come. We'd love to have them. So I appreciate the city for that sense of flexibility.
Any other questions, comments? With that, be entertaining a motion for this item. Councilmember Morthland.
Quick question here. The motion that we are entertaining is spelled the correct way. Do we need to make that statement now?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Stephen, you probably can't see it, so in
I
our,
can't.
in our book,
Yeah.
you can see it's RSEND.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. I see. Yes.
I was
yeah.
like, oh, we're resending this on Saturday.
We're not sending this in, we're not sending it to anybody, we are resending it.
Resending.
So yeah, if we can just have that clarified in the motion, that would be great, thank you.
I probably put that in there, just so we're clear.
That's what we thought. We didn't think it was even good.
So yes, motion to move this forward with the rescind spelled correctly.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Morthland, do I have a second? Councilmember Hills, thank you. All in favor? Passes unanimously, thank you. Item number 3, also on this agenda, is the recommendation to amend City of Roswell Municipal Code, Section 14.2.4, concerning the activities prohibited in parks and public spaces. Also, Director Malone will be presenting this item.
Thank you. So yes, like that was said, this is a recommendation to revise municipal code ordinance associated with open fires within parks along the river corridor and other related areas. This is section 14.2.4, activities prohibited in parks and public spaces. I'll come back in just a minute to the first circled area of this ordinance. What we are proposing is to section F. Currently, what we've been seeing is a bit of an influx in park participants coming into those areas and bringing their own portable grills. And when that happens, what we're seeing is that those embers, those charcoal, those burnt charcoals are being left on site in areas that aren't necessarily approved. Usually when the city installs our own grills at locations throughout the parks, we will provide an ember box that is there so that people can dispose of their embers properly and safely. What we're noticing is these embers are being dispersed throughout, specifically what we've noticed along Old Mill Park, down and along the wooded areas there, which is a health and public safety concern. As we heard last year in 2023, we had a major fire incident along Old Mill Park on the National Park Service side. So we really wanted to address the revision to this. So I'll read it in its entirety. Section F of this ordinance would read, open fires are prohibited, including portable grills, except within city-installed cooking grills located in designated areas. That is specific language that will allow for enforcement activities along the river corridor and related parks areas. What you'll see now above that in the area higher up in section 17, we've tried to clarify specifically what those park names are in that area above, which again helps with enforcement with our officers to specifically name the parks that we're mentioning in that ordinance. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Director Malone? Councilmember Morthland.
I would assume if we're making this update, we're going to have clear signage down there that says don't bring your grills.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Beeson.
What are the regulations on the national park side? Do those also prohibit open grills and open flames?
There are no open fires in the National Park Service side.
Okay, so then it'll be more consistent for making sure that we're equally enforcing it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because it's one of the, as a council member, oftentimes we get feedback from residents saying, I've witnessed people doing X, Y, and Z, either down at the river or down by the creek. The question or the concern that we often hit on RPD side is there are certain things that are permitted on the city side that are not permitted on the national park side and vice versa. There's oftentimes that people are, they're trying to enforce things that are not on the city side, it's on the national park. So just trying to make sure that's more consistent, which I think that makes sense.
No, it's a really good point. Sorry.
Mayor Wilson.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I think, Stephen, Director, can you just kind of reiterate that to Sarah's question is that on the National Park Service side, if I come in on the National Park Service side, or if I walk over to the NPS side, right, I still can't carry a grill with me, right? I can't kill a grill. If I don't have a grill, I still can't start a campfire, right? The NPS does not allow me to do that, right? And I just think that's a very important distinction because sometimes that is used and said, oh, I can do this over here, when in fact you really can't. And I'm really glad you asked that question because that's a very important distinction. And all this is saying is, hey, there's designated places to be able to start a fire, cook your food, really cool. Our city's already invested in it. They're already there. And that's where you get to use. Please use those. And that's really what this is saying. But don't use anything else because it's very hard to manage and it creates repercussions that are not so positive.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Beeson.
This is what I'm talking about, this microphone. One quick question, because I'm not seeing it right here, activities prohibited. Are fireworks permitted in our park system not executed by the city of Roswell?
The question is, do we have an ordinance against fireworks in the park system?
I believe, yes, we do, but let me follow up to ensure that. It's in the ordinance. I know our policies state that, but I want to verify that the ordinance language prohibits that. But keep in mind, I printed section 17 for this conversation.
Okay, so there might be
16 other sections in the ordinance of activities prohibited. I just want to make sure I'm getting that right before I answer it accurately.
Understood, yeah, because I know that was one of the fires started this past summer was related to fireworks, so just for public safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the
Yes, sir.
record, Mr. Chairman, I think it should be clear that when Councilmember Mortland begins his reelection campaign in 18 months, that the bullhorn was not allowed down there as he used the last time. So you want to make sure that politicians like Councilmember Mortland will go to any means, that he can't use his bullhorn down here like he did last time.
We'll be consistent. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Morphy.
For the record, since Councilman Palermo is no longer here, I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments?
Fireworks distinguishment, we just need to be clear on the record. So can we get that information before the meeting's over? Just so
Yes,
we can- okay.
yes, I'll find that now.
Hearing no other comments or questions, we'll entertain a motion on this item. Councilmember Morthland. Thank you, and Councilmember Hills, thank you for the second. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. This concludes our Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting. We will be sure to respond back to the question at hand regarding fireworks and their whether or not they're prohibited in our parks and facilities, and we will have that answer back. I will entertain a motion at this time. If I could just have one moment. Yes, we do have ordinances that are prohibiting fireworks here in our city code as currently stated, and our city attorney Davidson has just checked that. So just want to confirm that we already do have that ordinance in place that prohibits fireworks.
But for the question, just for the question at hand, it's not distinguished for the parks, it's just actually an overall ordinance for the city, correct?
It is in city parks, public, it's stated in 14.2.4, the following activities are prohibited in City of Roswell public parks, including our trail system.
Okay.
That is where, so it encompasses all of it, whereas Director Malone was referencing just specific parks within that grill ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. This concludes our Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Park Committee meeting for January 9, 2024. I'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Councilmember Beeson, and do I have a second? Councilmember Sells, thank you for being here again for your first meeting for our adjournment. All those in favor? Passes unanimously, thank you. Just give us a couple of minutes and we'll switch over to our next committee meeting.
Kurt, I just had to make sure that you weren't going to be sitting on the National Park side with your grill waving.
Here in the city of Roswell. I'll begin by acknowledging the elected body present, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember and birthday celebration extraordinaire, G. Lee Hills, Councilmember and our Mayor Pro Tem, Will Morthland, and also for his first committee experience, Councilmember Alan Sells. Welcome to our committee meetings. I'm Jeff Leatherman, Deputy City Administrator, and I'm joined by our City Attorney, David Davidson, and Executive Assistant to the Council, Michelle Miller. The purpose of committee meetings are for city departments to convey information to the Mayor and City Council, and to discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the Mayor, members of the City Council, and the City Administrator. As Deputy City Administrator, I will be the chair of today's committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings unless specifically authorized by the Mayor and Council. Public comments or questions are received at the regular council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month and the fifth Monday of each month during open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms, and if you have questions or need information regarding any matter, our staff is available to provide that information to you. In addition, if you have service requests or needs to report a concern, I would highly recommend utilizing our City of Roswell app or service web portal. We encourage you to view our calendar of events at roswell365.com. The first item that I have on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the Public Safety Public Works Committee from December 12th, 2023. I'll entertain a motion at this time. Councilmember Hills and Councilmember Morthland as our second. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? And it passes unanimously. Thank you. We have no action items tonight from Public Safety Fire or Public Safety Police. We have a couple of action items and requests from our Public Works Department, and we'll start with item number 2. Consideration to award a contract to Bureau Veritas Technical Services, LLC, for professional services for the facility condition assessment in the amount of $244,000.25. Director Brian Watson will be here to present that item tonight. Director Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Happy birthday. That is fantastic. Staff is looking for approval from Mayor and Council to engage a consultant to conduct a facilities condition assessment, or FCA, for the city. The purpose of the FCA is to provide a comprehensive documentation and analysis of the city's existing buildings, facilities, and infrastructure. This analysis will be utilized for prioritizing capital improvement projects and repair and maintenance requirements, as well as operating budgets and ongoing maintenance schedules. The FCA will be conducted for approximately 227 city-owned buildings, facilities, and infrastructure, comprising just under 1.5 million square feet. The inventory includes municipal government buildings, the fire stations, the Law Enforcement Center, the Roswell Alpharetta Public Safety Training Center, the Rec and Parks facilities, park-related assets, infrastructure, storage buildings, and all HVAC, mechanical, electrical systems. Staff put out an RFP. 6 proposals were received. An evaluation committee that consisted of EPW, Fire, and Recreation and Parks determined that a top-ranked firm, Bureau Veritas, was the most qualified to do the work. We also had a couple of interactions with Bureau Veritas to confirm scope and the cost. So staff recommends awarding a contract to Bureau Veritas in an amount not to exceed $244,000.25. Any questions?
Questions? Councilmember Morthland.
What is customary for one of these assessments to be completed for the city and all the infrastructure that we're talking about here? Is it every 5 years?
Yeah, great question. So the last time that the city had one done was in 2015, and the standard is usually once every 5 years. Several years ago, the city had proposed this, and it did not pass. It was another mayor and council. We're sorely in need of this assessment because this is absolutely what guides the city in planning for all of the maintenance that we have with the city's infrastructure.
And as you said before, this is citywide, not just for the assessment that was done for the Parks and Rec system.
That is correct.
They're going to be bringing in some Parks and Rec findings or finding their own. That's going to be a holistic review.
This will be a holistic of the city, yeah. So I thank you for that question because I would recommend that the city do this once every 5 years.
Councilmember Beeson.
So in the same way, I'll use RDOT as an example. They use their ongoing assessments. So for example, the concrete index in order to determine which roads will be prioritized for improvement. Is it currently policy, and this is outward to the group as well, given the fact that last year during our budget process, we established a new fund for ongoing projects related to deferred maintenance and making sure we're staying on top of that, do we have anything right now that guides how those funds are used, or can we use this ongoing 5-year assessment to guide those projects? Or is that a budget question?
I don't know if I can answer the policy side of it, but I would like to add one clarification. So once once the FCA is completed, Bureau Veritas will provide a priority list for the year number 1, year number 2, all the way through. We have it through 10 years, but we're also asking for an assessment for the next 20 years.
Perfect.
So there will be a priority list. Now,
So they provide the priority list then? Okay.
we have asked them to assess all components and buildings within the city, to provide a priority list, and then that's what we have as our guide, and then we provide that budget to mayor and council, and whatever that amount is, mayor and council can say, we're going to fund X number of dollars, and if we want to get granular, if mayor and council want to get granular, we could choose from that, but it will be there in terms of you will know what is being proposed every year.
Okay, that list would be very helpful. Thank you.
Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think, if I understand, Director Watson, it would be done through priority classifications,
Correct.
and it also would be based upon scope of services, right? So the scope of services, we are actually kind of outlining a lot of different litmus tests, which I think are be really relevant to us as the client. And then there's going to be very clear priority classifications, and it's here in your book, as a matter of fact. I think if you look on page 51, you're going to see priorities 1 through 5, and then behind that, you'll see deliverables, which, sorry, Brian, not to, I don't want to rain on your parade. I just want to kind of bring everybody to it. So pages 51 and 52 in your Roswell City Scope of Work will kind of show you how the vendors should be providing the information to you for assessment and review. And if you go back, I believe, to page 46 and 47 in your docket, required services will give you some insight, but look at kind of, if you get to the lower half, when you kind of get through items 4 through 10, will kind of, I think, also answer the question of, hey, here's the detail that we're going to be giving to you, and then we're going to give you a prioritization based on that detail. It's really pretty amazing they're going to do this for $227,000 based upon the amount of inventory that this city holds, which is a whole different question,
So-
which was another piece we're going to get to in a little bit.
Yeah, and I would like to, I said it before, but because you brought that up, I do want to clarify. We had a follow-up conversation with Bureau Veritas and confirmed, you understand what the scope is, you know what you're doing, and they said, absolutely. And so they also have done work for the city in the past. They actually did the ADA plan 2 years ago.
Comment that
Oh.
on 21, yeah, on November 21, they did the ADA and they had all the facilities to evaluate at that point.
So, yeah, the city has 227 buildings in its inventory, if I remember correctly. So there'll be a report on all 227 buildings with clarity that'll be actionable, that you'll be give guidance and
That's correct.
counsel on.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Morthley.
How fast do you anticipate this to come back?
The schedule is 3.5 months. I'm going to say 4 months if you don't mind. Give a little flexibility. From notice to proceed.
Other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on this item. Motion by Councilmember Morthland. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Hall. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item that we have on the list tonight is item number 3, consideration to award a contract to Vortex Services LLC for 3 stormwater lighting projects in the amount not to exceed $749,880. Director Watson.
Thank you very much. As part of the stormwater utility, and this is a good refresher, and it's especially for you council member cells, we actually have a capital improvement project list that the stormwater utility maintains and updates on a regular basis. So when we identify problems that are out in the system, whether it's a collapsed pipe, a failed pipe, or any part of the stormwater system, we put it onto our capital improvement project list. The purpose of this project is actually to complete 3 stormwater lining projects. These projects are the highest on our list related to stormwater lining. The reason that we're bundling the 3 of these together, these are either large pipe sizes or very long distance pipe sizes. So we feel that, and this is actually our 3rd lining package that we've been able to bring to Mayor and Council. They've been very effective and very cost efficient. We put this, the proposal out to our pre-qualified vendors. We had 3 bids that ranged from $479,888 to $728,000. We are recommending Vortex Services be awarded the contract to do this project. And if there's any questions.
Mayor Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Director Watson, you probably know what my question is. I haven't seen this before, so I apologize. So this is, I must have missed it, and I do apologize to you. You probably know what my first question is, if I look at these 3 bids.
Sir, I don't want to guess what question. Sorry.
I want you to. This is where we save so much time.
Yeah.
Jeff, you know what the question is. Mr. Knight, you know what the question is. So I got a bid for $728,696. I got a bid for $645,420. And then I got a winning bid for $479,880. Now, I know first glance people say, oh, that's great. You got a much better price, much better value, best low bidder, yada, yada, yada. My experience is usually there's a problem when you have that much discrepancy in your bids. So when I have 2 bidders that are that significantly, they're much closer, right, in range than my low bidder. My low bidder, percentage-wise, is significantly lower. Why?
Here's my guess.
Okay.
I'm going to do my best. I can't put my, if this is true. So when you actually go and compare all of the individual line items that make up these 3 components, you'll look, and oftentimes 2 of them were really close and then 1 was a little bit out. Okay, and it just depended on which project that you were looking at. What it appeared to be, when we were looking at the cost, it appeared that on 2 of these projects, which are very long pipes, very long distances that we're doing the lining, as well as very large pipe, it seemed like there was more of a fluff factor, if you don't mind me putting in there, that the unknowns that contractor might C, they felt that it was a little bit more risky for them.
Okay, awesome.
Those tended to be what we saw as the higher costs. When we put out the last stormwater lining package, there were 20 pipes altogether. And we did the same thing. We went with a low bid, and that contractor actually had a couple of comments like, well, I don't know if we should be doing this, or that wasn't, nope, you read the scope of work, and they actually completed the work. So we hold everything that is in our proposal that's out there, it covers us. So I think what it came down to is risk versus we think we can get this project done.
That's awesome. Well, that's great that you achieved that. Is this, in the RFP process, when we're doing this now, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director, Director, and Mr. Knight, are we currently, and Sharon, when we put this bid out, do we know what the bid should come in at?
We have an estimate for every project that we put out, and what our estimate was right at what the low bid was.
That's awesome. Okay. Good
It doesn't always happen like that,
No, I'm with you, man.
but
Good.
in this particular one, it was. We felt that this is not as risky as maybe the other two firms thought it was.
So these are all on call?
They're pre-qualified. So
Pre-qualified.
Yeah.
So now, let me ask you another question in terms of this profile of bids. So I got two bidders then, based upon your explanation, which I love, saying, yeah, you got too much fluff in it. So do I have now a system to go to other bidders that I can bring into the rotation who may be more aggressive and not put so much fluff into the bids? So I get a more competitive bid profile structure from the other new bidders?
So,
In other words, I don't want to, if these guys are this percentage, or these guys or gals are this percentage, the percentage-wise, they're way off.
so I don't know if this answers your question, but let me give you more information. On the first stormwater lining package that we put out to the same group of pre-qualified vendors, one of the two firms that didn't win it actually did the job because they were the lowest cost. The second bid that came out was actually the other company that did it. So the third bid that's come out, here's another firm. So it kind of just depends on so we've got 7 pre-qualified firms that do this work. Some of the pre-qualified firms we have not used in the past, but according to the qualifications that we've checked and the references, they can do the work. So there's an equal opportunity for all 7 of those pre-qualified firms on any project that we put out.
Sorry, I have Councilmember Beeson next, and then Councilmember Sills. Councilmember Beeson.
Quick question. So you said that you did an estimate. So I've seen projects before where cured in place actually came out to be more expensive than full replacement. Did we also perform an estimate for full replacement of these corrugated pipes?
We did not, because based on our expertise, a lining project is going to be the far more cost-effective for these.
Okay, so you're completely confident that it will be more
Correct.
cost-effective
Our
than
folks
replacement?
are like, if it needs to be replaced, then we will put out that it has to be replaced. Or what we will, if we are unsure, and we've done this in the past, we will say the contractor needs to go out, assess the pipe, and tell us whether or not it needs to be replaced or if they can do a lining.
Okay.
Our preference is always to do a lining because it's less invasive and usually much quicker.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sells.
Yeah, so two quick questions. One is, you said there's 7 qualified or pre-qualified, and that we've done business with, have we done business with this particular one before?
We have not done business with Vortex Services before.
Okay. And the second question is there some process for change order in the event that they find something untoward? I'm just wondering if they're hedging their bets, to Kurt's question about these discrepancies, or
Yeah, so if it's something that is within the scope, then we as a city hold them to that.
Right.
We have, if you look at the very bottom portion of the agenda item, we are recommending that we put an amount of, basically it's 10%, $47,988 for unforeseen circumstances. That's just a common thing that we do. So if there is something that is unforeseen that occurs in the field and it's a legitimate change order, then this amount has always covered it in my experience with the city. So I don't know if that answers that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I would say, I would just comment that with that ability, that can make your your bidders be more precise and tight on their bids if they realize that if they hit something unforeseen, there is a mechanism for changing that?
As long as it is outside of
Sure.
what we require of our stormwater contractors to go out is, they have to verify if there is anything incorrect in our RFP. They have to verify the sizes. They have to make sure that they fully understand the scope. And if they sign the contract, they say that they are fully aware of that, and we hold them to it.
Okay.
So the unforeseen circumstances are going to be something like, you start doing something and all of a sudden you come across an electrical line, or the pipe collapses and we need to do something to fix it. It's something that is going to be truly unforeseen.
Right.
But it absolutely falls upon the contractor to verify the work that they're getting into.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Morthland.
And just to pull back to the first two projects, you've been very satisfied with the packaging of these as compared to doing one-off, correct?
This has been an incredible benefit to the stormwater utility, and that's definitely a credit to mayor and council. When you all increased our budget, we were not able to bundle packages in the past because we just didn't have the funding to do that. So the first package, we bundled 5, the second one, we bundled 20, and this one, we were able to bundle 3. We are seeing anywhere from a 40 to 60% reduction in cost by doing this.
Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, awesome. Massive kudos to you on making that happen. Sharon, to you as well for being a big part of that. Can you guys deliver, as part of the budget process, this request? Can you deliver as part of the budget process those numbers and bring them back home in numerical values so we can let one another know, ourselves know internally on the staff, and our residents, as well as our future and current vendor, quote-unquote, relationships know, this is what's happening, here's the benefit to you, here's the benefit to us. We're going to keep asking a way of proselytizing it and continuing it. But also, just bring home some, let's start talking about, like 40%, did you say?
Yeah, the first one, I think this one was roughly 40%. I think the first one we got close to 60%.
Yeah.
Based on our cost estimates of all the
We can
projects.
put that in a budgetary form and start saying what the value is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason that we're able, especially if we have projects that are really close in the same proximity, then you have a consultant that's able to mobilize one time. That's a big component of the cost. So if you've got multiple projects, they love it. They come in and they can just start, getting the projects done.
Well, thanks to you and Sharon and Mr. Knighton and Jeff, you guys just taking the lead and pushing us electeds on making that happen. So thank you guys, because that's been a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. And just 2 comments, just to follow up on that. We should almost treat this like repaving the streets. Just have the list outlined and budget it and treat it that way. But my question is, can you tell us how old these pipes are in our city and how much life this gives them? I mean, basically, how much life is expected? And I know, depending on if they're on a busy street, it might be less life. But what's the expected life of our pipes, and what does this give us?
I'm gonna go in reverse of your questions, if you don't mind. So when we line these pipes, it basically is as though you're installing brand new concrete pipes. So the lifespan should be 50+ years. So that's the plan. These pipes that we're replacing are corrugated metal pipe. So that pipe, the city, we do not install that anymore. And so these pipes could be anywhere from probably 20 to 50 years old, and potentially even more. Corrugated metal pipe is we just don't use it anymore because it rusts out. It's not as, it just doesn't have the longevity that concrete pipe has. So that tends to be most of the pipes that we're lining are corrugated metal pipe.
Councilmember Morthland.
This question or comment is for you, Assistant City Administrator Leatherman. Did we not use the same methodology here with the artificial soccer fields when we went to the Grimes Bridge as well as the Roswell Area Park, doing all those fields at the same time through the same company?
Yeah, so in bundling work, you save on mobilization, as Director Watson had mentioned, and then you also get a lot better utility on your unit pricing, because you're mobilizing the crews, but then you're also bringing the equipment out once and using, in most cases, the same equipment. We also use this same bidding methodology at East Roswell Park in partnership with Public Works on the pipelining project there. So we've seen that partnership not only work within the stormwater utility, but also expanded into our park facilities by bundling those projects. Not only did we save it on the utility side, but we save money on the general fund side by bundling those projects. So we've seen that benefit spread around the city in a couple of different ways.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Director, Ryan, you, in the past, I think you guys have put out, your team has put out the state of the current RCP system and the CMP system, your storm system. You put your public storm system, and you said, this is what we got, this is what we estimate the system to be, this is how much we have of it, and this is what we estimate the system, the shape of the system's in. I think you guys have got, isn't that part of the stormwater plan?
Yeah.
And just for, can you off the top, if you can't do it off the top of your head, could you maybe, if you can, great, just kind of quickly outline for everybody how much storm, public storm we're talking about, right? Most of it's fairly the same depth, basically speaking, right? It's fairly shallow for the most part, like in relation, certainly.
It depends,
Yeah,
but
fairly, but kind of just give us, Mayor, an overview of how much pipe we're talking about, how much has actually been executed, how much we estimate to be executed, and the timetables to do such.
I don't have all that information right offhand, but I can, get that to you really, really quick.
Doesn't have to be quick, I just think it might serve everybody.
Okay. I also say that, it's a little plug in here, we are currently updating our stormwater master plan. We're actually in the final stages, and that is something, that we do that once every 5 years. If we do it in-house, we will be bringing that to you all probably within the next month or two, and it will have all that information in there.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, like, that's just, Brian just said something kind of like just off the cuff, no big deal, like we do all that in-house. That's a big deal. That the expertise, the requisite expertise is actually inside the city of Roswell. To be able to do an updated 5-year stormwater plan, master plan, is a big deal. Most municipalities are not equipped with that kind of ability, expertise. We are. And so, massive kudos and credit to the senior leadership and team and staff and the ability that we actually can do something that sophisticated in-house. So, just want to give you guys, like, I know like you guys are accustomed to it, but you guys are really good. And we're going to be talking about storm, by the way, a lot more over the next 2 years, just FYI. So, you can't ask enough questions about storm, because we're going to be talking about it more and more.
Just for clarity, would it be appropriate then to have Director Watson bring that information back when he presents the stormwater plan to Mayor and Council and have that together? We'll make sure to do that. Okay, we'll make sure to note that and then bring it back as a report back item with that plan. Councilmember Hills.
I'll also give a plug to transportation, whose talent delivered a transportation master plan just recently. So
Yes.
we're loaded up over here in Roswell. Very proud of our teams.
Agreed. Any other questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to move this item forward. Councilmember Morthland, do I have a second? Councilmember Hills, thank you. All those in favor? And it passes unanimously. The last item that we have on this agenda is item number 4, consideration to amend City Ordinance 24.5.20, plumbing and water conservation, and City Ordinance 24.5.22, conservation measures related to lawn and landscape irrigation. And Director Watson.
Thank you. So in this last item, in 2022, the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District, or the district as it's known as, released the updated 2022 Water Resources Master Plan. As part of this plan, the district developed a new criteria for plumbing fixtures and conservation, and developed a model ordinance for local jurisdictions to consider. The reason for this was to address water conservation in the region, and the changes in this ordinance only apply to new construction. The new model ordinance provided updates to definitions, updates to a table of fixtures, which is provided in your packet, and incorporated the landscape conservation measures into one ordinance. So just to understand that, right now the Roswell ordinances have plumbing in one area and landscape in another area. So we are proposing to bring the landscape under the plumbing ordinance with no changes to landscape, just be in the same ordinance. So the primary change in the ordinance are the revisions in the flow rates in the plumbing fixtures and the fittings. Staff recommends adopting the updated model ordinance, and I'll now take any questions if you have any.
Questions? Yes, Councilmember Sells.
So, can you talk a little bit about what, just for the sake of argument, what happens if we don't pass this with respect to our friends at the district?
Sure. So there's a few things that could happen. So failure to meet the new requirements under the water plan, the 2022 Water Resources Master Plan, can potentially affect the city's compliance with the state. It can potentially affect the city's Water First community designation, as well as affect the city's ability to obtain GFA loans and grants. So the city of Roswell is a member of the district, so the 15 counties that make up the district. And every 5 years, the city goes through an audit to make sure, are we still complying with everything that's within the district?
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those items. So by not being in compliance, it can affect, our ability to get grants, loans, in that Water First community designation.
So we call it a recommended action, but it's not really, right?
All I can do is recommend.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Mayor Wilson.
I'll go down the rabbit hole. So, for those of us who are not particularly, who are unfamiliar with these kind of things, myself especially included, and we look at it and you say, hey, and by the way, we're talking about new construction. This is all related to new construction.
This is all for new
It's
construction.
not for anybody who has an existing home. What if I do a remodel? Do I have to do this if I do a remodel?
If you do a remodel and you have to apply for a permit for whatever that remodel is, then it would fall under this category.
So,
But if you go out and you're doing your own remodel and you're just replacing a toilet, you're not needing a permit.
yeah, but let's, well, I'm doing a remodel, I'm probably gonna need a permit, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of remodeling going on in Roswell, very significant remodeling, very nice remodeling, pretty extensive, et cetera. So let's say, I'll just use for me as a person, so my wife, she does a remodeling on a bathroom. Let's stay out of the kitchen for a second, stay out of the danger. And let's go to a bathroom. And she gets that new shower head, and the shower head that allows a flow of no more than an average of 2 gallons of water per minute at 80 pounds per square inch of pressure is listed in the water center specifications for shower heads and meets the U.S. Department of definition of energy definition of shower head. That's great. But I'm just a layperson, and I gotta explain this to my wife. Is she gonna be mad with me? Or is she gonna be happy with me? Is she not gonna notice any difference?
I'm not going to comment on whether or not on what's.
Your wife. I know where you live, and I know.
My wife is going to comply, I'll tell you. No.
She's gonna comply, okay.
What I can say is, so when these numbers come out, we did have staff go out to Home Depot, and we also went on the internet. And so what we did is said, let's just do a random search on each of these fixtures. Okay, I'm sorry?
Councilmember Beeson.
Sorry, I was just saying, most of the way it's trending, they already comply for the most part with the
That's where I was
requirements.
going to go with it. So what I wanted to do to be able to even bring this to you is I figured the question might be, well, how common are these fixtures? So on a random selection of each one of these, there were only a couple that did not meet, and those were actually in the lavatory faucet at the bottom. All of the ones that we randomly selected, and I'm not saying that there's not some out there that don't meet it, this is a commonplace. In fact, especially on things that are most common, the toilets and urinal shower heads, most of these were actually either at these levels or below.
Let me ask a political question as a public servant, as an elected official. So is one of these city councils, 5 city council people in here, or I as mayor, I do, and one of our fellow residents does a remodel, right, next year. Are they gonna call one of these city council people and say, doggone it, I just had to do your permit process, and I just had to put in these stupid fixtures that you're making me do according to your water plan. And I'm really unhappy with you as a consequence. Are we gonna get that call next year?
I think there's always the likelihood that you're gonna get a call anytime that somebody's having to comply with.
You know what I mean? I'm not talking about outliers. I'm talking about like, there's a normal person going through the process.
So
Oh,
I think
man,
it's gonna be a common call, I do not.
Okay.
That's why we did the research. Again, I can't say that every fixture and everything out there meets this, but a very,
Am I gonna feel like I'm in Munich, Germany, getting a shower?
Right.
Am I gonna be like traveling in Europe and I'm in Munich and I'm getting a shower? Is it gonna seem like that?
He's worried about his water pressure.
yeah, I don't think it's gonna be that restrictive.
Okay.
I can say the last time that we did,
Your pressure relief valve in your basement, and we don't have blood pressure.
I'm compliant. I'm a compliant.
Pop that governor right on, good rainwater.
The last time that we brought, so this is not something that's very common, that there's changes in these type of regulations, especially in terms of the fixtures. So the last time that we came to mayor and council was in 2017. So just to kind of give you an idea, and especially when you kind of look at the technology now, there's not a whole lot more that technology is going to be able to get these fixtures down unless you go to something that's a chemical treatment or something that's just not going to gain a lot of acceptance from the general community.
Did I do good? Did I do good? Did I ask the right questions? Just want to make sure I asked the right questions.
Councilmember Hall.
2 questions. So our inspectors will be checking for these, is that correct, when people get permits that they meet these
Yeah,
standards?
that is part of the general inspection, that if, the city's got to go out and inspect it, then, this is just part of those requirements. And there's already obviously requirements that are in the ordinance now, so it's just following up on that.
And you may not know the answer, and I should know the answer, but aren't a lot of these available for tax rebates, or are these the basics and they have to upgrade off of this? There's so many rebates and incentives and tax incentives available for.
There are still some out there. The largest tax rebates actually were when the first round of low-flow toilets came out, and there was like $100. In fact, the city still does provide a rebate for toilets if you go to low-flow toilets. Most people have already converted to that. So that was really the largest tax break. They do have every so often, discounts on WaterSense products. Is it going to be as much as that initial low-flow toilet discount? Probably not, but yes, there are still opportunities out there.
And these all meet, and maybe Councilmember Beeson can comment on this as far as lead. Did these meet the lowest level of any of the lead, or do you still have to upgrade to even get to the lower lead levels?
I have to look on this one. All of them are gonna have to be low flow capacity for lead certification. But this isn't the stringent lead requirements by any means, I don't think. I don't think, for the, so Councilmember Hall had said, is this in alignment with lead certification? I would have to check what the exact flow is for those, but you're going to have low flow either way for lead. That said, the lead requirements are so much more than just low flow faucets. It's pretty stringent standards, even to get the lowest lead certification.
So this is below that. This is
Yeah.
way below.
If I were to take a wild guess as to what they're doing, these are just basic water conservation standards. I don't even think it's exclusive to this area. They're probably trying to make them more alignment with federal level, and those aren't even slightly stringent. So I wouldn't say that any of this is above and beyond. No, none of this is radical. It's not really above and beyond. Very high level view. Keep in mind, we serve off of the Chattahoochee River for the most part. Chattahoochee River supplies about 70% of the drinking water to the metro Atlanta area. It's just trying to be mindful of how we're using that water and not being wasteful with it. And I think that's just probably in alignment with their goal.
Well, this also includes potable water as well, right? This would probably include, this is irrigation. This whole deal is reference to irrigation as well, I would guess.
So
And
this is within, I don't think this is related to
double check.
Chris.
I'm looking at a lot, I'm looking at a lot of red here, Brian.
Sorry, I've got to, well, so you're seeing a lot of red because the way that our current ordinance is written versus what we're adopting, what we're recommending to be adopted, as opposed to going through word by word, we just did wholesale changes because it's just, it would get very confusing. So we just tried to say, we're replacing these big sections.
Like you took out at the very end, section 24.5.22, conservation measures relating to lawn and landscape irrigation.
So we removed it from 24.5.22 and we moved it under 24.5.20. So that's the landscape ordinance that we have, and just to be consistent with what the district ordinance, model ordinance is, that's why we combined the two. The city had them separated and we put them together.
You got cooling tower makeup, I mean, you got there's a lot of.
There's a number of things that are in the model ordinance that does not apply to the city.
Really?
But because it's more consistent with their model ordinance.
Okay.
And I would say cooling towers does apply to the city. In fact, City Hall has a cooling tower. But as new buildings are
By the
being
trash,
built-
by the trash compactor?
Yeah. But as new facilities or buildings or businesses are coming in and they're putting in cooling towers, they need to meet the water conservation measures that the district has put or set in place for the 15 counties, and that's what we've been including within the ordinance. And as Brian has stated, we decided to move the landscape conservation ordinance all into the plumbing and conservation ordinance, so it's all in one, and freeing up other ordinance base for other things later on down the road, should they come.
Councilmember Sells.
I know we all want to move this conversation out of the outhouse, but I do have a couple more questions and comments. And that is, you talked about availability. You didn't talk about cost comparisons. Did you do any cost comparisons between these types?
Did not do cost comparisons, but when you kind of look, what I have seen, and this is well before this came about, when I've looked at cost comparison just in for other reasons, usually the higher costs are related to name brand or a functionality, not the amount of water that is coming through the actual fixture.
I understand what you're saying.
So if you buy a Kohler versus American Standard, Kohler is going to be more, is it that it's better?
It's, yeah, finish issues.
Usually the name or the finish is going to
Right.
actually drive the cost versus the actual amount of water coming through the fixture.
Right. So just a comment, I did get some expert advice on some of this, and none of the experts are named Bubba, the plumber. But I will say that, not too terribly long ago, the Home Builders Association here and in another state that I'm familiar with did reviews of the cost of a house. And some 40% of it is this kind of regulation. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. So, I realize that we have no choice but to pass this. But just to be clear, as we talk about affordable housing and those kinds of questions, it is this kind of thing that keeps driving costs up. And the more of this we see, the bigger the problem it is. So that's it for Councilmember Sells.
Other questions or comments?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, that's a great point, Alan. I mean, to your point, the more that you participate in things that seem benign, they don't turn out to be so benign. And I think, I was talking with Councilmember Hills before, we want to do the right thing. We want to do the right thing in everything we do. We want to be intentional about it. And we don't want to throw up red flags for the sake of throwing red flags. And we don't want to create consternation for the sake of creating consternation. But Alan, you bring up a very good point. It's a lot of times that people don't realize that there's cost, there's real cost associated. And they impact a lot of things. They impact the supply chain. They impact affordability. They impact it. It's like, it sounds good sometimes. The recipe sounds really good. It's really good on paper, but then you don't realize all the after-action stuff with the unintended consequences of what your good intentions were. And a lot of, for example, I don't think that there's anybody riding around at any level, federal level, state level, county level, or any municipal level, to your point, that's riding around saying, I want to make life more difficult for people. I honestly believe that regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, that most people are trying to create solutions that they think is in the best interest of their fellow residents, fellow countrymen, fellow statespeople. I really believe that. I don't think people go around saying, I want to make your life more difficult. I don't think policy, I mean, I know, I'm not trying to be too, like, but I feel like most people want to do the right thing. But sometimes, a lot of times in government, we don't realize the unintended consequences of our actions. And it being at the municipal level, we're at the lowest echelon, right? We're the boom, 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 boom. And we're having this conversation, and so it's worth noting, Mr. Knight, we talked about this every 2 years, right? As we radically approach how this government is adaptive and responsive to its fellow citizens and to its businesses and its community, that looks more like an agency that's innovative and creative rather than, hey, this is a municipal government, right? And part of that is to say that we also is changing our thinking internally. Let's just because stuff gets thrown down the line at us bureaucratically, and I don't mean that bad or legislatively, that doesn't mean that we always participate in it. That doesn't mean that we have to participate in it. And so so our request does, like, you guys are the experts in a lot. You're the experts, right? And you know whether or not, oh yeah, we got to go along to get along. And if we don't go along, here's the consequence. And if the consequence is, you know what, we're going to lose out on a grant, or we're going to lose out on some loan, we may say, hey, that's a serious conversation. That's a conversation that we may say, look, those are not high stakes. If the conversation is, hey, it may impact our water supply and how we get water, right, that's a whole other conversation. But it's also a conversation that we might need to know to be able to politicize ourselves. Because we too are residents of the state of Georgia. We too are residents of Fulton County. And we too have a responsibility, if you will, to inform other agencies, just like we are doing now politically, right, on things that we believe in, and say, look, here's the consequences of what you're putting down on us. Not only does it necessarily put us undue burdens on it, but we don't think it's the right action. And to your point, and the unintended consequences of that may be more severe than you have intended them to be, and counterproductive. Yet you're using it as a bullwhip, a leverage tool, that if we don't comply, we're going to face dire consequences. And we the people are going to say, hey, that's not so cool. So I just say that, right, we don't always want to be put in, like, and I know you guys get put in this position all the time. Comply or die, right? Right. Comply or die. And we're saying, you know what? There may be some times we want to fight back. If it's like, we don't want to comply. And I'm really glad you brought that up. It's not because we're trying to be rebellious. It's because the unintended consequences are more dire than people realize sometimes.
They're not zero.
That's right.
They may not be dire, and this isn't a hill to die on, I'm not saying it is.
Exactly.
But I do want to point out two things. One is that I would put your pyramid the other direction. I think we are the closest to the residents and therefore the top of the legislative pyramid. I realize we have to deal with all of exactly. And so I ran on, and I believe strongly that we should try to continuously devolve power to the local level. I truly believe that. So just making a point, sorry to waste your time. I realize we have to, the outcome of this was sure with my first question, right? So, but I'm still going to make this point.
Well, I'm not going to speak for director, but I know the director fairly well, right? And I think that he has the same philosophical perspective that we do. He just happens to be an expert in the field. It's like, here's the real deal. I don't disagree with you philosophically. I just got a problem. I got to make sure I keep giving you water, the access to water, and not get cut off, right? By some bureaucratic nightmare.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you all. Councilmember Morthland.
Just to wrap this up,
He's always got to finish. Palermo's back.
I need to make a motion.
just to wrap this up, Mayor Wilson, I promise the numbers on these papers will get the conditioner out of your hair.
No other comments. I will entertain a motion for this item. Councilmember Sells. Motion, do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Morthland. All those in favor? And it passes unanimously. Thank you. We will move that forward to your agenda. That concludes the items that we have for your scheduled meeting tonight. I want to just thank everybody for the opportunity, and I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Morthland. All those in favor? And it passes unanimously. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Well done.